Welcome to Buckeyes Tomorrow Morning for Tuesday, December 3rd. I'm your host, Tom Orr. The game against Michigan in 361 days, perhaps more relevant to everyone's interest today. Next round of the college football playoff rankings will be revealed later on tonight. Tony Gerdeman of BuckeyeHuddle.com joins me. We're going to be doing a look at what that might look like because there was quite a bit of a shakeup over the weekend in the rankings. We're going to be doing that using the Associated Press Top 25. That has not been exactly what the College Football Playoff Committee has laid out the last couple of weeks, but it's been close enough that we can kind of use it as a little bit of a ballpark example of what you might be able to expect. Tony, I'm just going to pull this graphic up right now, and we're just going to have everyone just be able to look at that, and don't worry, we'll be over in the side if you want to just look at our smiling faces. We'll be over there. I'll just run down the AP Top 25 right now, and if you're looking on the left-hand side and wondering, what are the asterisks for? Those are teams who I don't feel deserve. No, I'm kidding. Those are the teams that are playing in the conference championship games this weekend, and therefore potentially have an opportunity to move up, could theoretically move down. Everyone else, you sort of figure they're probably more or less stuck in their place without another chance to make a statement this weekend. So the top 25, again, this is just the AP, not the College Football Playoff Committee. Number 1, Oregon. Number 2, Texas. Number 3, Penn State. Number 4, Notre Dame. Number 5, Georgia. Number 6, Tennessee. Number 7, Ohio State. Number 8, SMU. Number 9, Indiana. Number 10, Boise State. Number 11, Alabama. Number 12, Arizona State. Number 13, South Carolina. Number 14, Miami. Number 15, Ole Miss. Number 16, Iowa State. Number 17, BYU. Number 18, Clemson. Number 19, UNLV. Number 20, Colorado. Number 21, Illinois. Number 22, Missouri. Still in the poll. Good for Missouri. What an incredible season they've had. Number 23, Kyle McCord in Syracuse. Number 24, Army. And number 25, Memphis. So mapping that onto the college football playoff bracket. Number 1, the Big Ten champion, Oregon. Number 2, the SEC champion, Texas. Number 3, the ACC champion, potentially, SMU Mustangs. Boy, that's weird. I keep wanting to put them in the Big 12 every time we talk about this. Number 4, the Boise State Broncos, Mountain West champions, assuming they win this weekend. And then number 5, Penn State taking on Arizona State in Happy Valley. That would be quite a trip. Tony, seeing the folks from Tempe, Arizona have to go to Happy Valley in mid-December. This is one of these great things that we've been waiting for years and years and years. This is just the first game on this list, and I'm already officially intrigued on what this is going to look like round 1.
That's what we've always wanted. We're always like, when we talk about the playoffs, we want to see Arizona State play in the north. We want to see them play in the cold. And I think back to one of the recent Fiesta Bowls. It had been late December, early January, being out there, and it's probably 45 degrees in the morning, and watching a jogger. She's all bundled up, winter coat and gloves and scarf, and she's out there jogging, and it's this is kind of nice out here. I don't know so I just imagine then that team having to play in what would probably be something similar to what the Buckeyes played in this past weekend. Have fun with that.
Mm-hmm. All right, so the rest of the first round matchups, again, this is just based on the AP. It would have number 9 Ohio State going to number 8 Tennessee, and we're going to talk about why I don't think that's probably the order those teams are going to be in when the CFP committee puts it out later on Tuesday. Number 11 Alabama going to Notre Dame to play in South Bend. There is one that you probably have been hoping. Boy, I'd love to see Alabama play in the north. You might get to see your wish. It might get your wish in about a month. And Indiana going to Georgia in the 10-7 matchup. I look at this, Tony, and regardless, I think probably Ohio State's going to be number 8. And again, I'll show my work on that a little later on. But if you look at where they are right now, assuming they're 8 and Tennessee's 9, and you get Tennessee coming to Columbus, and then you have a round 2 game where you're playing Oregon in the Rose Bowl, you're going to have to beat good teams at some point. That's a winnable first game for you. And then you're going across the country, and it's going to be a challenge. Your Oregon's going to get a good team, but you also have the possibility there, if Penn State beats Oregon in Indianapolis, then you're going across the country and you're potentially playing Penn State in the Rose Bowl. And boy, you want to talk about a winnable game? That feels like a pretty winnable second game for Ohio State.
Yeah, either way, if you win in the Rose Bowl, look what you've got waiting for you to play in a national championship. You're talking Arizona, Penn State, or Boise State. That's what's between you and the national championship game. So yes, you can't avoid a good team forever, but it sure seems like you'd rather maybe be at the top of the bracket than perhaps the bottom of the bracket. Maybe, but yeah, if you can, you're going to eventually play Oregon. So if you get them when you're at as healthy as you can be, would you rather play them in game 2 or game 4 or something like that when you're like, we don't have another game in us? And so um, you're still, I still think there's plenty of pain from that game. And if like, if Ohio State knows, yeah, they're frustrated right now, but if they know once they see the actual rankings in less than a week now, that if you win this first round game, you have Oregon in the Rose Bowl. I think that might be something that would, get their juices flowing.
You would think, I mean, the chance to get revenge for a very, very narrow loss on the road, and yeah, a bunch has changed about the Ohio State team since then. But if you're playing Oregon on the in the Rose Bowl, anything after that first round, if you're worried about, boy, Ohio State, can they how well are they going to be able to throw if it's snowing on December 21st or whatever? Your next round is either in a dome in Arizona, Pasadena, where it almost never rains, in the Sugar Bowl in the dome in New Orleans, or in the dome in Atlanta. So you're going to have probably a good weather fast track game in the quarterfinals, and then the semifinals you're in the dome in Arlington or the in Miami, where you could theoretically rain, and then in your championship game you're in Atlanta. So you have one potential bad weather game, and then how often do we hear people talk about, boy, if Ohio State could only play in a fast dry track? You're looking at nothing but fast dry tracks probably every after you get to that first one. It's nothing but fast dry tracks after that. So let's real quickly, which teams do you look at and go, boy, I hope Ohio State, if you're an Ohio State fan, you really are hoping they will avoid who's unbeatable this year?
Yeah, nobody, but you're going to take a look at Georgia and Texas because that's just human nature. That's just, I think, the natural reaction. And so here that, one of them is going to take out the other. And really, you look at Texas and they've got potential, but you've seen issues. Like, I don't know, how can anybody be afraid of Georgia right now after watching Georgia Tech do what they did? We saw what Alabama has done. So like right now, you're more afraid, I think, of logos than anything else, because there's nobody here that Ohio State should be concerned about or should be like, oh, I don't want to play them. I think if you look over this, I think the Oregon Ducks are the team that if you could avoid, you'd want to, but also how well you played against them and how close you came to beating them. So there's some sort of a proof of concept there, and exactly what you're getting. But nobody here, like, there's a world where you'd like look at Notre Dame and be like, I don't really want to deal with their defense. I don't want to deal with Riley Leonard. And it's like, what? The team that lost Northern Illinois, this is what we're talking about? And this is what we're talking about.
Yeah, there's not that juggernaut 2019 LSU team, 2020 Alabama team. They're not there. I mean, Texas just beat Texas A&M 17-7, and they really have not put up a huge game at any point. And the other factor that we're not talking about yet in this is between the first round and the second round. You have seen in other sports, you have seen at times in college football, the long layoff. If you're kind of in the rhythm of, okay, you play a game and then you play another game about 7-10 days later, sometimes you're in better shape coming in. Even if you are a little bit beaten up, you potentially are a little bit more in rhythm and ready to go. You've seen Ohio State off that bye week look a little rusty several times in the past few years. Perhaps you'll run into that with teams looking a little rusty after that week off. Your first four out right now, based on the AP poll, again, this is not official: South Carolina, Miami, Ole Miss, Iowa State. So, we'll see where you're in a spot where there's going to be some real interesting conversations around Alabama versus South Carolina, and maybe Ole Miss. I mean, you get into a spot where, well, how can you leave us out? They have, we have a better record than them, or we beat them head to head, or whatever. Someone's going to be mad, Tony. The one thing that is the only guarantee in all of this, someone's going to be big mad. So, all right. So there's been a lot of people talking about, Tennessee and Ohio State. One of them's going to be the 8, one of them's going to be the 9. So I went in and I just thought, okay, I'm just going to look at resumes. We're going to try and figure out what the committee does, because the AP poll has Tennessee ahead of Ohio State, which in this case would make them the 8 seed and mean that Ohio State has to go down to play a game in Neyland Stadium. I'm not sure Ohio State would love that. I would frankly love to cover a game in Neyland Stadium, but I don't know that Ohio State would prefer that. So I thought, all right, we're going to put together a resume. We're going to see, because to me, I feel like Ohio State's got a pretty decent body of work, and maybe I'm not looking at Tennessee's resume. Okay, here we go. We're going to put it up. Ready? Go. All right. Both teams 10-2. Okay, so you can cross that line off. Best win, Ohio State by 7 points on the road at AP number 2 Penn State. Tennessee, their best win by 7 points at home against AP number 11 Alabama. So, okay, you can put the check mark in Ohio State's column there. Second best win, Ohio State by 23 points at home against number 9 in the AP poll, Indiana. Second best win for Tennessee, and you're going to go, no, he can't. No, he's wrong. That can't be right. 23-17 in overtime against Florida. That's their second best win. Take a moment. You're saying no, that can't be. Here is the teams that Tennessee has played. They play 8 conference games. They finished 3rd in the SEC. They lost to second place Georgia. They beat 4th place Alabama. The rest of their conference schedule, they played the 10th place team in a 16-team league, the 11th place team, that is a loss to Arkansas, the 12th place team, the 14th place team, the 15th place team, and the 16th place team in a 16-team league. They played 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16. 5 of the 6 worst teams in the SEC. That was 5 of their conference. 6 of the 7 worst teams in the SEC. That was 3/4 of their conference schedule. Their 4 non-conference opponents. Certainly, Tony, they must have played. Not so fast, my friend. Tony, how many FBS wins did their 4 non-conference opponents total this year? Total 4 non-conference opponents, FBS wins.
Oh wow. Let's say 6.
I will remind you, those 4 teams played a total of 48 games.
Okay.
How many of them were wins over FBS opponents?
I'm going to up it. I'm going to say 10-38.
Mm-hmm. Well, they didn't play all FBS teams, because they did play. Those 48 games were not all against FBS teams. They played Chattanooga, who was an FCS team. That team beat 0 FBS teams. They played Kent State, who went 0-12. So you're still sitting on 0. UTEP went 3-9 this year. So there's 3. North Carolina State, well, they went 6-6, but that includes a win over an FCS team. So the total, Tony, 8 wins for non-conference teams, non-conference opponents against FBS opponents.
I did say 6, and then I changed my answer to 10. So if we average those, I was exactly correct. Good job on me. Tom, I just want to the resume comparison. That's great and all, but what you don't have here is number of SEC wins, and I believe Tennessee has 6 of those. Yeah,
that's true. That's
Ohio
true.
State, 0.
And if you're wondering why I picked these things, like, this is the stuff that the committee tends to talk about. I didn't put a game control stat in here, but Ohio State's game control has been better than Tennessee's, just based on the fact that they've generally won by bigger margins. Top 25 record, 2-1 for Ohio State, 1-1 for Tennessee. We want to talk about the best loss. The best loss, Ohio State by 1 on the road at the number 1 team. Tennessee's is by 14 at the number 5 team. Worst loss, which is just the other loss. Both of them against unranked teams, so those are both considered bad losses by the committee. Tennessee by 5 at Arkansas, which finished 6-6. Ohio State by 3 against Michigan, which finished 7-5. So really, unless the committee does say the only metric that matters is wins against SEC opponents or most recent loss, I feel like it's going to be hard for the committee to justify putting Tennessee over Ohio State. We'll see. Crazier things have happened, but I just wanted to sort of show my work there, because I've been pretty insistent on our board when people have asked about, is Ohio State going to have a home game? Is Ohio State going to have a road game? It feels to me like it would be pretty hard for the committee to put Tennessee over Ohio State. It's possible you have other teams in the mix there. But it just, Tennessee and Ohio State, it feels like Ohio State's realistic floor is probably 8, because I don't think you can justify getting Tennessee over them. And, Ohio State has a head-to-head win over Indiana. Alabama is not, Alabama has not had a really remarkable season. I think it's probably more likely that you see Ohio State higher. You could justify putting Ohio State over Georgia in a way that, that's more likely to me than Ohio State being behind Tennessee. So then you're putting Ohio State at 7, and then you're maybe looking at Texas in the second round. And there are different paths here, and we're going to know a lot more on Tuesday night. And don't worry, we'll have a live show to break it all down for you. But when I look at this, Tony, I find it difficult to believe that unless you have some kind of weird sequence of events this weekend where you have a bunch of big upsets. If Georgia beats Texas, then sure, Georgia's definitely going to be Georgia's going to be ahead. Texas is going to be ahead, you would assume, of Ohio State at that point. And if Penn State beats Oregon, those two teams are definitely going to be ahead of Ohio State. But it just feels to me like it's pretty likely that Ohio State's looking at a home game in the first round of the playoff.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I do wonder what happens with SMU if Clemson wins in the ACC championship game. Have they done enough to get in? And even looking at the Tennessee comparison, you're talking about their schedule, and it's like even Kurt Cignetti says that's a soft schedule. I'm just going to say that. So I think Ohio State will remain ahead of Tennessee. But, I mean, to expect no chaos at this point, I think would be a fool's errand. I think we've learned enough. Now, you've gotten down to the nitty-gritty where the chaos is kind of limited because the better teams are playing, and the more sure footing is there. But we will see, and what kind of fight at the end is there going to be for these last 3 SEC teams getting these last spot or two when this is all said and done, because it's going to get vicious.
Oh, yeah. I would love, Greg Sankey has weighed in on so many pieces of this. I feel like I'd like to see Greg Sankey rank the SEC teams in order of who should get in. And you can't put everyone at number 1. You can't put everyone together tied for number 1. Like you've got Alabama and South Carolina and Ole Miss closely ranked together. Tell us which one you'd like to see put in there. And maybe the committee will even honor it, but I would just be fascinated to see him show his work. I'm also, if SMU loses close to Clemson, I wonder where SMU is. If SMU stays number 8 and they lose close to Clemson, it would be very hard for Alabama, for them to fall 3 spots and fall behind Alabama. So then you get Alabama left out, and then you've got just Texas and Georgia and Tennessee and 3 SEC teams and 4 Big Ten teams. And oh boy, Greg Sankey may not be willing to share his opinion on which team should get in, but I bet Greg Sankey will have opinions if 3 SEC teams get in and 4 Big Ten teams get in.
I'm starting to imagine like an Ocean's 11 type of thing where you've got some SEC officials who infiltrate the ACC championship game and end up calling that game somehow and making sure nothing goes awry with Clemson stealing a bid from the SEC.
Yeah. Oh, name one time when in the last week when perhaps SEC officials may have stepped in to prevent the ACC from stealing a bid from, I don't know, a team from like the state of Georgia. I don't know. Listen, I can't think of a single time. I'm sure nothing untoward, Tony, has ever happened in that nature. So we will have plenty more coverage of this coming up on Tuesday night. Wanted to just kind of run through this and give you a sense, because this was a scenario that we have not talked a whole lot about. Everyone is sort of focused on, would Ohio State be better off being the 1 seed or the 5 seed? Well, they might still end up higher than that. We'll see where Ohio State is as compared to Penn State in the committee rankings on Tuesday night, because you could theoretically be higher than that. You could be the 5 seed, you could be the 6 seed. We'll see, and then that could all change depending on what happens this weekend. But going to be a lot of interesting stuff to talk about Tuesday night. I hope you will join us at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Kevin, Tony, and I breaking it all down for you, watching that ranking reveal live, sharing our thoughts, sharing our insight and analysis, discussing the mighty SEC teams and their extraordinarily difficult schedules. All that and more coming up Tuesday night at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. We hope to see you there. That will do it for today. Thank you guys all for joining us. Have a great day. We'll talk to you tomorrow.